Welcome back. Today's video is going to be about eyeshadow palettes that I hate, that I love. This was inspired by the great song with Rihanna and Neo. I won't sing it for you because I'm a terrible singer, but I thought this would be a fun video to do because these palettes, I really like the colors and the formula, but there's something about each palette that I really just don't like, and I kind of hate that I love these palettes, honestly. Some of these things are petty. Obviously, this video is just for fun, but please let us know what palettes you have that would fall into this category. If you're interested in other eyeshadow palette videos, I have a whole eyeshadow palette playlist where I talk about all sorts of different palettes that I love and hate and everything in between, and let's get into it. All right, the first palette in this lineup is the Colourpop So Jaded. Now, I really love the colors in here. I love the formula. This is still one of my favorite palettes, but there's a couple things that I really hate about this palette. Number one, I've mentioned in several videos that I don't buy from Colourpop anymore, so the brand is definitely a turnoff for me. I also really hated the pressed glitters. I know that the Colourpop pressed glitters, some people love them, some people hate them. Personally, they irritated my eyes and I wear contacts and just not a risk I'm willing to take anymore, so I removed those. And then the only other thing I would say, this is a larger palette. Now, it's not as big as another palette that I'm going to mention. It's actually not that bulky size-wise, and I really do love the colors in here. I think that this is such a good palette. I mean, this is probably one of the best things I think the Colourpop has released. The formula, the color selection, these greens, they're so amazing. Also, the packaging on this is gorgeous. I really like the packaging. The Colourpop palettes are magnetic, so I did consider depotting it, putting it into a Z palette, but unfortunately, whenever I depot something, I never end up using it and it just goes to waste. And I actually like this packaging. I do think it inspires me. So yeah, even though I'm not into the brand, I hate the pressed glitters, I still really love this palette. All right, since we're talking about brands that I don't buy from anymore, the other one is Morphe. So a couple of things, let's start with this one. This is the Jaclyn Hill palette. I like this palette. I actually really love the colors in here, and I really do love the formula. I think it's a fantastic formula. There's a couple things though that I hate about this palette. Number one, Morphe as a brand, not my thing. Also the packaging. Now, look how much bigger it is than the So Jaded palette. So the Jaded palette in size, it's not that bad to me. I personally just don't like bulky packaging because it's difficult to store. So really size-wise, I can't get too mad at the So Jaded palette, but this thing, it's huge. It's so difficult for me to store this with my other palettes. And there's so many repeat shades in here. If they had taken out some of these repetitive browns, it could have been smaller and it could have been maybe the size of this. I think I would have much preferred that. I mean, like these two colors, nearly the same. These two colors, nearly the same. These two, same story. Yeah, I think you get it, but I love the formula. I really do. There's so many amazing neutral shades in here. I think it's a really good palette. And also, yeah, Jaclyn Hill as a person, not so into her either. Now this palette, I think the size is great on this one, so I have to give them credit for that. I think that was a major improvement. This is the Ring the Alarm. I still love this palette, even though, again, I hate a couple things about it. Particularly, I hate that the formula, it's not as good as the original Jaclyn Hill. That annoys me, but I still think it's a good formula. It's just not as good as that other one. But I have to admit, these warm toned shades, they are fantastic. I love this color selection. I'm a warm toned person. I'm wearing a very warm toned look. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, if you're interested in the makeup that I'm wearing, I filmed a Get Ready With Me. That was my makeup low buy update. So I will link that if you do want to see that. Yeah, I love warm tones. Obviously, like warm neutrals are probably some of my favorite makeup looks. And yeah, I still do like this palette. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about a palette that basically makes me mad because it's been discontinued. Now, this is the Milani Soft and Sultry, and I've talked about this a lot. This is one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection. Beautiful, cool, toned shades. I hate that Milani discontinued this. Now, I own it, so I don't need to buy it, obviously. However, If something happened to this palette, like if I accidentally dropped it on the floor, shattered it, broke it into a million pieces, I would want to go buy it again. I saw that it was on Amazon for $30. Sounds a little shady to me. Maybe it's even a fake. I have no idea. I'm just saying. But yeah, that's so expensive. And this palette was $20 at the time. Obviously, people still do want it because they're selling it for a lot more money on Amazon. And this formula was so good. Why did Milani do that? The other thing I absolutely hate is that the palettes Milani replaced this line with, no good. Now, I bought one of them and it was terrible. The Gilded Coast, one of the worst palettes I've ever owned. I've heard mixed reviews. Some of the other ones people have said are good, and then others also have heard terrible reviews. Why did they do that? This formula is amazing. They did not need to discontinue this. What they should have done is actually create more palettes in this formula. And also this packaging is way nicer than the packaging on the newer palettes. It's just a bummer all around. And when the Natasha Denona Glam palette came out, I didn't buy it at that time because I thought that these would be very, very similar. I have since purchased the Natasha Denona Glam palette, and for someone like me who's pretty passionate about eyeshadow and owns a lot of palettes, they're actually more different than I thought they would be. This one is more cooler tone. The Glam tends to be a bit more neutral. And the shades in here are darker and a bit more sultry, like the name says. Also, people have compared this palette to the Anastasia Sultry palette. And again, I think they're pretty different, maybe a couple similar shades, but yeah, it's not as similar to those palettes as I thought it would be. Now, I mean, obviously I couldn't get similar looks with other things in my collection, but honestly, if something bad happened to this palette, I would want to get it again. So that is a bummer. And same story with this, the BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival. I've talked about in a lot of videos that I just can't stand that BH Cosmetics discontinues their palettes so quickly. This is still one of my favorite colorful palettes in my entire collection. This palette is over 3 years old. It's the first palette I reviewed on my YouTube channel, so I have a lot of nostalgia because of that as well. The formula is amazing. The color selection is amazing. Again, this is one like the Milani. If something happened to this, I'd want to be able to repurchase it. And honestly, the whole limited edition thing, I don't really understand why brands discontinue products that are good products and then replace them with something that is not as good. Now, the BH formula is good, but Milani decreased the quality of their eyeshadows. That makes no sense to me. And I get limited edition if it's like a special thing, like, you know, like a Disney collab or something like that. I just think a lot of palettes, I don't know, a lot of makeup products in general, if the product is good and people are buying it, I guess I don't understand why people discontinue it, except for the obvious, to release more products that people will then buy. So anyway, it's a bummer that that palette is gone. Next up, I seriously hate that I love this palette because it's so expensive. This is the Natasha Denona Green Brown palette. I love this palette. The quality is amazing. One of the best formulated Natasha Denona palettes. I own a lot of palettes by Natasha Denona. They're not all as good as this one. The color selection, again, warm neutrals. I love that. So many gorgeous bronze shades. I love the greens in this palette. But I hate how expensive it is, and I kind of hate myself for even buying this, honestly. Full price, this palette is $239, and I actually bought the bundle last year with this one and the purple and blue palette for a total of $310. That is insane. That is the most I've dropped on makeup, and even though I love this palette, I somewhat regret it. And I don't love the purple and blue one as much as I love this one. I just don't use it as much, and I also don't think the formula is as good. So this is kind of a bummer. It's so expensive. I kind of regret spending this much on it. I mean, I technically paid $155 for this, but I paid $310 for the bundle. But the thing is I love this one, and I don't love the purple and blue, so I regret buying that one. I don't know. I mean, this is one where if I dropped it on the floor and totally destroyed it, I would be really, really sad. But I don't think I'd spend the money again. And yeah, I kind of regret spending that kind of money, even though this is one of the best formulated and most beautiful palettes that I own. So from that standpoint, I'm glad that I have it. But yeah, the price on this is insane. Kind of a similar story with this one. This is the Tom Ford Quad in Nude Dip. And The reason I hate that I love this palette is that full price, it's $88 for a quad. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. Now, I didn't pay that. So what I paid for this, I don't have the same regrets that I have for the Natasha Denona palette, because I got this at a CCO for $33, which $33 for a quad is not bad in my opinion. I mean, I've paid more than that for a Charlotte Tilbury quad, and I love these colors. This formula is so smooth, no fallout at all, so finely milled. I mean, if you don't like eyeshadows with fallout, I think you would definitely like this palette. It's just, again, if I dropped it on the ground, I'd have to spend $88 at Sephora to get this again, unless I could find it at a CCO again. But yeah, $88 for a quad, I mean, that just, it's crazy to me. I think, I get it, Tom Ford is a luxury brand, I get it, so is Natasha Denona, but $88 for 4 eyeshadows is ridiculous. Alrighty, and last up on this list is this. This is the Pat McGrath. This is the Golden Opulence. The only reason I hate this palette is the packaging. Look at this. It doesn't open all the way. This drives me crazy. And then you have this other flap. Again, I mean, this is pretty petty. I get it. And I love this palette. I mean, formula-wise, this palette is amazing. Color story-wise, I love it. Really, the eyeshadows themselves, I have nothing bad to say. And I actually really love this sparkly red with the gold packaging. That's actually really nice. And I know that on the other palettes, the newer ones that she's released in the 6 pans, it doesn't have this extra flap. It just has one. This is one, yeah, the problem is when you're using it, you know, I open it up and try to set it on my vanity, it closes back up. It doesn't stay open because this doesn't go past this mark. So you open it and start trying to dip your brush in there and then the palette closes. Pretty petty, I know. It's really not that serious. I still love the palette, but yeah, this packaging, it just drives me crazy. But the red is so beautiful. I mean, this sparkly red packaging is gorgeous. I love it. And again, the shadows themselves are amazing. And I really should use this more. I haven't used this palette in quite a while. I think this is one of the best formulated I have by Pat McGrath. I don't have a ton of Pat McGrath palettes, but yeah, this is beautiful, but I'm glad that at least on the newer 6 pans, she improved the packaging. Alrighty, that is it for this video. I really, really hate that I love these palettes, but honestly, I still do. They have flaws, but I still really like these. I think the quality is amazing. And obviously, you know, that's the most important part. It's the most important if you actually like the eyeshadows and use them. But, you know, there are some negatives here. So that is it for this video. Let us know what eyeshadow palettes you have that you just hate that you love them. If you're interested in the makeup I'm wearing, I will link that video if you do want to see that. Get ready with me. That is it. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.